This morning we're going to continue the day and build on yesterday. So let me welcome those of you who weren't here yesterday to our 2012 Alliance Institute for College-Going Culture. Now yesterday we spent most of the time talking about policy issues and initiatives and trends at both the state level and the national level that influence college readiness and success of students. The work of college access programs and the college-going culture in schools. Today, we're going to bring it down just a little bit closer and talk about some of the college outreach and college readiness strategies that are being implemented in both our post-secondary institutions and in our middle and high schools. The agenda today is organized a little bit different, and so this morning we're going to start with a plenary session, and you are also going to have in that plenary session an opportunity to interact with the keynote speaker. And I won't peep too much of it because Dr. Thompson is going to introduce him shortly, but I have to tell you that I've been reading this gentleman's work for a very long time. I remember when we started our 2000 GERA program, and you know, when you start a new program in a new place, one of the things you have to do is try to find what the context is, and then you want to see what other people are doing. And so one of the pieces of work that I came across was his work that talked about some 9 essential elements of college access and college outreach work. So for me, it's a particular thrill that he is here with us today. Let me give you a quick transition into what the day looks like. Now, on the back of your name tag, there's a dot, I think, that or the name of the session that you will be attending. We think that these sessions are really quite full, so if you want to switch around, that might be a little bit more difficult than you'll expect to find. So if you can, stay with the sessions that you've been assigned. After the breakout sessions, which are following the plenary session, we're going to come back to this ballroom for lunch. And I really do want you to stick around for the entire day because the final session at the end of today is a really, really important piece of what we're trying to do here over this day and a half. Now, regardless of what sessions you participate in, I'm going to encourage you to engage with the people around you and to ask yourselves the following questions. How am I connecting to others involved in college access and college readiness in my community? At the end of the day, we're going to come back again together for this final session, as I said, and then we are going to answer 2 more questions. Who else should be at the table, and who should I partner with in my community? And that final session will be important because that's the way you're going to come at those answers. What we hope in that final session to do is to begin to create college readiness community snapshots and lay the groundwork for the creation of a statewide college access and college readiness resource directory. So to begin framing the conversation, I'm going to ask Dr. Aaron Thompson to introduce our morning's guest.
Good morning. It's really good to be here. I thought yesterday was absolutely a great day. You know, Yvonne's always, for me to be able to find any time where I can spend an entire day and a half in any one place, it's almost a miracle. And I have to tell you, Yvonne has been able to get me to do this more than any person in the state of Kentucky. So, and I've always benefited from it every time it happens. So thank you, Yvonne. This morning, I had a chance really to read the bio and get to know this young man on paper, and I have to tell you, fairly impressed. And we just had a 2-minute conversation a second ago and impressed me more. So I can tell you he's a smart guy. Bill Tyranny. Dr. Tyranny is a university professor, Wilbur Coffer Professor of Higher Education and Director of the Pullis Center for Higher Education at the University of Southern California. He also serves as the president of the American Educational Research Association Dr. Tyranny is committed to informing policies and practices related to educational equity. He is currently involved in a project to develop and evaluate an interactive web-enhanced computer game for low-income youth that will boost high school students' college aspirations and equip players with knowledge about preparing for and succeeding in college. He is also involved in projects pertaining to the problems of remediation to ensure that high school students are college ready, and a project investigating how to improve strategic decision-making in higher education. He earned a master's degree from Harvard University and holds a PhD from Stanford University in Administration and Policy Analysis. He has received the Distinguished Research Award from the Association for the Study of Higher Education, and most recently from the Division of AERA. Not bad. Dr. Tyranny has also been working in the areas of college access and readiness for a good part of his career. In one of his earlier works, Preparing for College, 9 Elements of Effective Outreach, he and his colleagues analyzed and defined the parameters of effective college outreach programs, examining both the social support network and the programmatic elements needed to support college readiness and success. Their research examined the question, with a finite amount of time and resources, which activities are more likely to improve educational achievement for underrepresented youth in the United States? As a sociologist, I appreciate that question, as you might guess. As the book states, college preparation programs cannot be all things to all people. All activities are not equal, and some activities will be more effective than others. More recently, he was the chair of the committee that developed the Institute of Educational Sciences Practice Guide, helping students navigate the path to college, what high schools can do. This guide targets high schools and school districts and focuses on effective practices that prepare students academically for college, assist them in completing the steps to college entry, and improve their likelihood of enrolling in college. So we would like to welcome to the stage Dr. Bill Tyranny, Director of the Pullis Center and an advocate for those that you advocate for. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. I am very glad to be here. Now, I'm sure you've heard lots of speakers tell you they are very glad to be wherever you are. I, however, am particularly glad to be here. About a year ago, I gave a talk somewhat like this in Las Vegas. And I teach, and it was a fall lecture, and they wanted me to come up the night before because Los Angeles, Las Vegas is not very far. You know, but I'd prefer to sleep in my own room. So I slept in my own bed. I got up in the morning. I made the plane. Plane arrived early. Got a taxi to the hotel, no problem. And actually, the conference was organized somewhat like this. There were 1 or 2 phone calls, but lots of emails back and forth. And I try to save on paper so I didn't print everything out. I went to the hotel where the conference was to be, and it was Las Vegas, so slot machines and everything. I walked through the hotel, and I had plenty of time, and I went to the conference center, and it was empty, except there was one woman walking back and forth, and I walked up to her and I said, I'm Dr. Tyranny, I'm here for the conference. And she said, oh, thank God you've arrived. You know, they're waiting. And she started running, I started running, and it was a little strange because I didn't go on till 9 o'clock, and it was like 8 o'clock. And then the door opened, and I walked in, and I expected a group somewhat like this, and there were about 1,000 people. And I thought that I was giving a lecture like this, but there was a panel of people. She said, you go up there. So I went up, I walked, and I sat down, I put my papers down there. The first speaker was speaking. I had no idea what he was speaking about. So I leaned over to the fellow next to me and said, hi, I'm Bill Tyranny. And as he introduced himself, I looked and his card said, Conference on Hematology. So I said, I'll be right back. So I went back out into the hall, and the woman's standing there, and I said, I can't do this. And she said, are you nervous? And I said, no, I'm speaking on college access. And she said, no, you're speaking on hematology. I said, no, I'm not. She said, you're Dr. Tyranny. I said, yes, I am. And she said, you're right here. Dr. Robert Tyranny is speaking on hematology. I said, William Tyranny, college access. And she said, well, I don't have that one. I have no idea where it is. So I go back to the hotel. I talk to the hotel. They have no idea. So I called my secretary in Los Angeles, and I said, Diane, where am I? She says, you're in Las Vegas. I said, I know I'm in Las Vegas, but where am I supposed to be? Well, they had changed the hotel. And I found out they had changed the hotel because there was a conference on hematology that had picked them up. So, of course, it was across town. I had to go way far across town. And I get there just as the poor guy who is introducing me, and I come in and I said, if I'm breathless about this topic, it's because I care so much about these things. So I am actually very glad to be here this morning. I did notice that the hotel had been changed. And I also did wonder yesterday when Joanne picked me up at the airport if it was more than simply Kentucky hospitality. But people had found out that I don't really know where I'm going. And I should say this morning when I got off the elevator, I followed one of you, I thought. But I looked, and I almost went into the Pavement Solutions How to Make Sense conference, which is over there. And I can't speak about that either. But I can speak about college access. And what I'd like to do this morning is begin the way that little video ends, which is that I really think that how we need to think about these things, that there's a certain social urgency to what we're concerned about. We're not simply having a job, we're really trying to change the world. And by changing the world, we're talking about people like this. This is a young fellow who I've mentored, who is now a junior in college. And you know, probably if he had not been involved in the sorts of activities that I had gotten him involved in, he probably would be at a community college or not at all. He'd probably be working. And then this fellow has graduated from Stanford University. He has a master's degree in engineering with a grade point average of 3.86. He likes to remind me that his GPA would have been even higher, but I had told him to branch out, take different courses. And he emailed me once and said, well, I did. I got a B in women's studies. Thanks a lot. But, you know, he's now working for a consulting firm. He's all of 24 years old and making $90,000 a year, right? It's a real success. And he's a success for his family and for himself, but also for our state and country. And it matters. It matters, you know, in a state that's as economically depressed as California, it matters that he's paying taxes. But it also matters for his family. He has a younger brother. He's from Ethiopia originally. You know, and I just saw him about a week ago, and he said to me, and it was just as a matter of fact, he said, yeah, my younger brother's really good. I'm flying him back to Ethiopia. Right? Because he wants him to reconnect. He can speak, the kid can speak Amharic, but he hasn't been there for so long, he barely can. And I thought, wow, what an opportunity. How remarkable is that? And then, you know, there's a great amount of literature right now that talks about how students don't work very hard, that students don't spend time, they spend an awful lot of time on social media, that they're screwing around a lot. But the reality for me is that the kids that I work with, that we study, that we look at, are actually like this guy, Eduardo, who, again, comes from a very difficult background. And his mother has left and he's living with his father in a very really poor social living situation. And when he graduated, his father actually wanted him to work in the 99-cent store stocking materials, because that's understandable, right? If you bring home minimum wage salary for hour upon hour, that makes sense. What doesn't make sense is this sort of ephemeral 4-year degree. He's getting it in psychology. But look at how hard this young man is working. You know, he really is not the norm of what we think, because the media portrays these kids as sort of goofballs. The thing I particularly like is the follow-up email this guy sent me a couple minutes later, because he knew that I would say, what's with the typos? You got to straighten up here. Because after all, they are teenagers, right? We have to recognize that they live sort of crazy lives. But we also know that President Obama, the Gates Foundation, the Lumina Foundation, numerous think tanks have talked about the need for us as a country to have more people participating in higher education. Let me give a quote from W.E.B. Du Bois, who wrote, "Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some more convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done, and not some future day or future year. It is today that we fit ourselves for the greatest usefulness for tomorrow. Today is the seed time, now are the hours of work, and tomorrow comes the harvest and playtime." And I really think if we're going to get where we need to be, we can't delay. The imperative is for today. Now, if we look at where this country is today, we are no longer in the lead with regard to students participating in and graduating from some form of post-secondary education. We know that we are losing ground to participation in higher education when we look to our competitors. Now, here, let me tell you something about what we're going to see over the next few years. You know, once upon a time, climate change was taken as a given. And then people said, well, not everybody believes in climate change. And now we've got sort of on the left hand and on the right hand. So there is similarly a significant amount of evidence that we need more people participating in higher education as a country today. What we are now going to see, what we are seeing, are people saying that's actually not true. We don't need that many people participating in higher ed. Now, there are a couple discrepancies there. One is 10 years ago, with this data, with OECD data, we were at the head of the world. So why then are we accepting that we are no longer that today? And let's recognize, when the critics say that not everyone needs to participate in higher education, what's not being said is who those people are. You know, they're not saying, well, what we really need is we need 10% fewer from the upper class, 10% fewer from the middle class, and 10% fewer from the lower class participating in higher education. And of course, there are racial implications of that as well. Now, by no means, none of us are saying that everybody who's going to participate in higher education needs a 4-year degree. What we do know is that a high school degree increasingly is no longer sufficient. We know that a bachelor's degree is likely to earn a significant amount more money over the course of a lifetime than a high school degree. We know as well that with the recent recession, it's pretty darn tough for students with bachelor's degrees to get a job. We also know it's even more difficult if you only have a high school degree. So what do we need to do? My own sense is that we need more people participating in the post-secondary sector. If we are going to reach the goals that President Obama has set for us, it means, for example, in my own state of California, we need about 100,000 students a year, every year, for the next decade, participating in higher education. Now again, some of those only need a certificate, students. Some of them only need an AA degree, and some of them need a bachelor's degree. But we're not, as a state, my state is quite dysfunctional right now, we are in no way prepared to increase our post-secondary going, college going by 100,000 students a year, every year. Think of that. We have no plan whatsoever. On the other hand, if you look at a state like Utah, Utah has a pretty clear path in terms of how they want to increase participation rates from high school to college. If they are successful, they don't yet have the plan of how they're going to absorb all these students because their campuses are full. But to their credit, they have a plan. We don't, in California, we don't have anything. I'd be curious to know what Kentucky's doing. We also know that too many of our students graduate from high school and they are not college ready. In my own state, if you look at the number of students, the percent of students who need to take a remedial writing or math class at the California State University, which is the broad sector four-year institution, we have about 60% of the students need to take at least one class in remedial writing or math or both. Even in the University of California system, we've got about 20% of the students who have to do that. And in the community college sector, it's much higher. Now, there can be a robust and useful argument about how helpful remedial classes are in the post-secondary sector. That's great. We can talk about that. There is no argument whatsoever that if you arrive college ready, that you don't have to take remedial classes. You're much better off than your counterpart who has to take a remedial writing or math class. So the question then to me is, what do we do? And with that sort of question, who do I turn to? Donald Rumsfeld. A little strange for someone like me to use Donald Rumsfeld, I know, but nonetheless, you might recall that he made this famous quote. And this is an engineering quote. Two of my presidents at my university have been engineers. I live with an engineer. Berhane, the student who graduated from Stanford, is an engineer. Engineers talk like this all the time. And what I want to do is I want to begin by talking about the known knowns. And in the introduction, it was referenced that I did something dealing with the What Works Clearinghouse, the Institute of Education Sciences. I'd encourage you to go to that website. They have an array of reports. Now, I have my own problems with the manner in which the What Works Clearinghouse functions, but in reality, what they are trying to do is they're trying to compile all of the extant literature that exists about a particular topic, how to teach algebra, how to teach fractions. And in this case, what can high schools do? And they've tried to ferret out everything, and is basically the question for us was, I chaired the panel, is there anything we can say to you? Because as the introduction said, we can't do everything. With finite time and finite resources, what can we do? And that's what I think of with regard to Donald Rumsfeld saying known knowns.